I would like to call to order this special meeting of the Santa Barbara Community College District Board of Trustees on October 3, 2019. My name is Robert Miller, and I am the president of the board. First thing, for those who wish to participate, we're going to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I see there is a flag right outside on a pole, so we can direct our attention that way. I pledge of allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, I welcome all of you to this community forum. We're providing this opportunity for the community to learn more about what is happening at Santa Barbara City College. So we very much appreciate your attendance here this evening. At this time, we ordinarily provide an opportunity for comments from the public concerning any items described in the notice for this meeting. Tonight, however, we're going to wait on public comments until after you hear the brief presentations from each board member. In order to allow as much time as possible for questions, we are asking commenters tonight to limit their comments to 2 minutes or 3 minutes instead of the usual 5 minutes. And if you wish to provide a comment as opposed to a question, which we will get to right after the comments, there are public speaker slips on the table in the back, and if you could grab one of those and fill it out. That's for making comments. We'll have a separate question period. We'll take questions from the audience, and you don't need to fill anything out for that purpose. It's my distinct honor tonight to introduce, first of all, our interim President Superintendent, Dr. Helen Benjamin. In March, we convinced Dr. Benjamin to serve as our interim president until the end of this year while we conducted a search for a permanent new president. The board will be interviewing finalists for that position on October 25. There's a screening committee composed of a handful of persons from the community as well as staff, faculty from the college, and they've gone through the initial process and are going to interview a smaller number on October 11th, and then they'll be recommending the finalists to the entire board for our consideration on October 25. There will also be on October 24 a public meeting at Garvin Theater at the college, where each of the finalists will make a presentation. So you're all invited to that as well. Let me say that despite pleas from many of us, Dr. Benjamin will be leaving on December 31. We convinced her to come to Santa Barbara City College, come out of retirement to serve as our interim president. At the time, we knew of her national reputation as an outstanding community college president. She served 27 years at Contra Costa College District in various capacities with their 5 separate colleges. The last 11 years at Contra Costa, Dr. Benjamin was the chancellor in charge of all 5 colleges. I think I speak for the entire board and college when I say that Dr. Benjamin has far exceeded our expectations when we hired her in March. She is an amazing leader in so many different ways. She has guided us through some very difficult challenges. Our decision to hire her was probably, in my opinion, the best and most important decision we have made in my 19 months on the board. With that, I will call up Dr. Benjamin.
Good evening. I want to begin by welcoming you to this event and thanking you for coming. Your presence here indicates your interest in our college. It is a genuine pleasure for me to be at this college. It is just a wonderful place where wonderful things happen every day for and with students. And it's also a pleasure for me to work for and with this board, and I will introduce them to you now. First, Dr. Peter Hasland represents Montecito, sorry about that, Peter, and Carpinteria. Yes, okay, 3 different areas. And second, Veronica Gallardo, Santa Barbara, Marcia Croninger, Santa Barbara, Kate Parker, the Mesa and Santa Barbara, Jonathan Aboud, Hope Ranch and Isla Vista, Craig Nielsen, unincorporated Santa Barbara County, and Kenny Igbechi, our student trustee. And now I am going to call back up our board president, Mr. Robert Miller.
Thank you, Dr. Benjamin. First, I'd just like to give you a quick overview of what we're going to discuss this evening. On the slide in front of you are several topics that we're going to cover. We're going to, each of us on the board, there's 7, actually 8 of us with student trustee Yabeshi. We've divided up the topics to make each of us present an item or 2. So we'll be sharing information about the background and history of SBCC. We'll talk about current major initiatives and enrollment facts, talk about student offerings, fiscal outlook. We have some challenges ahead of us to try to achieve a balanced budget in the next year due to changes in the student funding formula that has been decided by Sacramento. And we hope to wrap up in about an hour and leave 20 to 30 minutes for questions and the public comment period, as I mentioned earlier. And we'll ask you to hold your questions until the end of the presentation. So first of all, I want to note that give you some kind of a broader perspective and mention that the system of higher education in California that we know today was largely developed in 1960 with a master plan that was developed by a team appointed by the University of California Regents, the State Board of Education, under the administration of Governor Pat Brown. The plan was to develop a coherent system of post-secondary education with defined roles for each of the 3 levels. So it was established that there would be a University of California system with University of California colleges, also California State colleges, which were later named California State Universities. And then the third, the California Community College system. The systems also differ in how they are governed. The 10 UC schools are governed by regents appointed by the governor. The 23 state universities are governed by a board of trustees that are also appointed by the governor. And then the community colleges, we do it a little differently. We have boards of trustees for each of the 114 community colleges. And that's the role that my fellow board members function to govern and manage, set policy actually for the Santa Barbara City College. I sometimes use the term Santa Barbara City College Community District because the state is organized into community college districts. We happen to have one college, Santa Barbara City College. Some of the districts have more than one. Let me just also mention that the Chancellor's Office, headed by Eloy Oakley, manages the entire community college system in California. So let me just point out that, as you know, the UCs and the CSUs have competitive applications with admission rates that average out to 12.5% for the University of California, 33% for the California State Universities. One thing that's wonderful about community colleges in California is that we accept 100% of the applicants, assuming basic requirements are met. As I heard somebody say the other day, we will never have an admissions scandal in the community college system in California because we admit 100% of the applicants. Finally, just to give you an idea of the size of California's post-secondary college system, community colleges have the largest share of students, approximately 2.1 million students. State universities enroll about 450,000, and the UC schools about 246,000. The community college system in California is the largest college system in the country, and I would guess it's probably the largest such system in the world. With that, I will turn it over to Trustee Dr. Haslam.
I think I was selected to give this talk about Santa Barbara City College's history because of the implicit assumption that maybe I have been here for the entirety of that history. I have some seniority, but not that much. City College was formed in 1909, so we could actually say this institution is 110 years old. It was initially a very small institution and took its major spurts of growth after World War II. It was originally a part of the Santa Barbara High School district, and there were tensions between the district and the college. Basically, they were tensions focused on finances. And I mean, it had to do with the differing missions of the two institutions, and ultimately they did decide to separate. And the City College was originally located. Well, it had been located in various sections of the city, but ultimately on the Riviera, in a location that had been vacated by the University of California. And in about 1957, there was a move to purchase our own site, and that was done. Approximately 47 acres of the main campus was purchased at that time with a bond measure at a cost of $415,000. Quite a bargain. When I arrived in the fall of 1969, and my guess is, and I haven't been able to figure it out specifically, was about 7,000 students, 7,000 to 8,000 students. And we were pretty well cramped on the main campus, but in the early 1970s, we purchased the West Campus, which was about 31 acres of additional land. We began immediately to develop that by placing the Garvin Theater on the West Campus. Peter MacDougall was truly sneaky in trying to get the faculty to go over to the West Campus, and he had this brilliant idea. We'll put the library over there, and the faculty will have to go there. And so the library was the second building, and then came the other buildings, the interdisciplinary center and the business communication center, and we now have a thriving two-component campus joined together by a bridge that crosses over Loma Alta. Here's some pictures that might be of some interest. A very famous picture of all of the early presidents of the college, including the guy who hired me. That's Giulio Bortolazzo on the right, and the administration building as it was. Here's Eli Luria and Peter MacDougall and Helen Pedotti, Helen and Eli were very instrumental in developing the campus financially. So the one thing that, I mean, the campus has changed a lot, but the one thing that has remained solid is our focus on why we're here. And that has to do with student success. I mean, we can deal with other issues and other purposes, but the fundamental purpose of any community college, and that's especially true of us, is that we focus on students because we believe that it is our responsibility to assist this next generation in acquiring whatever they need in order to succeed. With that, I will turn it over to Craig.
Thank you, Peter. I think I graduated or left from City College, which I'm an alumni of, the year before Peter got hired. And I benefited greatly from the experience. I was admitted to Cal Poly and went on from there. So I looked at those pictures, and in the last picture, one of the slides, there was a bunch of portable buildings there. And I think most of my classes were in those portables, and there was nothing on the west side of campus. It was just nothing there. There was no gymnasium, and there was a lot of things that weren't there that are there now. But what I'm up here about to talk to you today is we have a mission statement and a vision statement. Says why we do what we do and what we see in the future. I'm not going to read that to you, but I will tell you this: if you want to read it again and you don't have it in writing, you go to sbcc.edu and you'll find it easily. And but there's a process to how we come up with those, and there's reasons for coming up with those. One of the major reasons that we have to formalize the process and come up with those is because it has to do with our accreditation. We get reviewed periodically, and if we do really well, they skip us for a few years. If we don't do really good, they come back over and over and over real fast. And so we have a policy, we have regular increments scheduled where our vision and our mission statements are reviewed. The mission statement here is, I forget if it's 3 or 4 years old, but we just did it. And it seems like now we're going through the process to do it again. And it's a consensus. It goes through a number of committees before it comes back to the trustees for first reading is for like, do we like it? Do we have any suggestions? And usually the second time we look at it, it's to ratify it. It's a process, and it's a very important process because if your goals aren't clear, it's very hard to meet your goals. Students should know that if you don't know where you're going or where you want to get to, and you don't have a good plan, it's going to be hard to achieve your dreams. So planning is everything, and this is part of that process. Right now, we're just starting it again, so we're gathering information from all the stakeholders involved in the college, from faculty, students, our foundation, anybody interested, including the trustees, us, and the public. Any input on our mission statement or our vision statement is greatly appreciated. These things weren't written out in a hurry. The words were carefully and painfully chosen and debated how you're going to say this and what the language is going to be. So everybody's input is very important to us. And it's that idea of having a plan. So thank you. And I guess now I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan. Your turn.
Well, if we're dating ourselves of when we graduated college, I was in 2014, which is also when I got onto the board. It's been a great time, and at the time I was running, President Obama made the declaration that at least 2 years of community college should be free, and later that January in 2015, our board approved a resolution supporting that vision. And later in 2016, our foundation took leadership when the state had enacted, and college used to be free for all in California up until the 1980s for the community college system. Our foundation took the vision and applied it to a privately funded model to provide a comprehensive program that waives fees and books and supplies for 2 years for full-time students. So we really appreciate, as a board, the leadership that our foundation took in this regard to make sure college is available and more accessible and affordable to those who finish their secondary education in our district, whether that's high school when you're 18 or if you're getting your GED later in life if you didn't finish at 18. 3,000 students have already benefited from the program, and we have around 1,500 a year going into the Promise. And as a board member, ex officio liaison from the Board of Trustees to the foundation, I'm gonna give the pitch now while everyone's watching that every dollar counts in supporting the Promise. We do a hard job every year, the staff at the foundation, to raise that money, and every dollar makes it happen to give tuition-free college and books and supplies to all the students participating in the Promise. Thank you. I'm gonna pass it over to Veronica now.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about our enrollment and our students and where those students end up throughout the city. So Santa Barbara City College is fortunate to have 3 campuses, and we are hosting you tonight at the Schott campus. And this is where we have a lot of our programs. This is where our adult ed graduation happens. So if you haven't attended that, I highly encourage you, because that is truly the epitome of the mission of the community college, of how we really reach all populations of adults and students in this community. Over off of Turnpike in Goleta, you're going to see our Wake campus, and that is where we currently house our School of Extended Learning. That is where a lot of our non-credit programs and non-credit courses are being offered, and that's great. I'm done. Okay, this is what I want to talk to you about. They told me I have 2 minutes. So our main campus currently has about 11,900 students. And the figures you're seeing here, they're head count. And basically what that means is that we're counting every single body that is present. Usually when we talk about funding, we're talking about FTS, which are full-time equivalent students. And how we factor that is basically if you're taking 7 units and the person next to you is taking 8 units, well, you together are taking 15, so that would make up 1 full-time equivalent student. So what we're looking at here is enrollment and looking at where our students come from. I want you to notice right there where it says local high school students, dual enrollment. Those are students that are in our high schools currently. Those are students that we admit under special admit. And these are the students that you're seeing across our city, either at different academies at your local high schools, engineering, construction tech. Some of those courses are offered directly on our high school campuses, and some of those courses students take either online, or our most popular time is during summertime. Our local high school students, I think it's notable to note, if I can share Lindsay's slide, during our, I think, August 22nd board meeting, she shared that our local high school students, while it's only 1,796, those students end up creating about 700 something FTS, right, Lindsay? You're shaking your head at me, no? Okay, I'm like, she's telling me not to say something. Okay. Yeah, so they end up making about 724 full-time equivalent students. That's huge when it comes to the way we're funded and the impact that those students have in terms of having access to the programs that we offer locally here. A lot of our students come from the district. Since the peak of our 2009, 20,000 enrollment that we had, ever since then, we've been declining steadily every year after that. That has direct correlation to our budget and the way we're funded, and Trustee Croninger will highlight and speak to that. Same thing with our international and out-of-state. Those have also been declining steadily. But however, as Jonathan mentioned, the Promise has had a very positive impact to the college, where we're capturing students from not just our local high schools, but from private schools, students that are recognizing that Santa Barbara City College is the first choice. So thank you.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I'd love to thank every member of this community. Your support and donations is why SBCC is still here today. I also love to thank every member of this community for your support and the rare opportunity to serve as student trustee. Today, I would love to talk about the offerings that SBCC has for all students. So whether you're in high school or just out of high school or trying to learn about a particular subject area, SBCC has a class for you. I would love to show you a video that captures most of the services that SBCC has for all of our students. we have a good study abroad programs that take students abroad and they learn out of the shores of the United States. We also have top 5 majors, including business and biology. Also, we also have 80+ degrees and also 300 sunny days. So thank you, Santa Barbara, for hosting us. Thank you.
I got to come back so soon, faster than I thought. Oops, I think I didn't get to the, oh, is it here somewhere? No. Pardon me. School of Extended Learning is what they asked me to talk about. And boy, when I first got elected, it's been over 7 years ago now, or about 7 years ago, there was a big controversy about the School of Extended Learning, but it wasn't called that then. It was called Adult Ed, and the state funding formula changed, and nobody knew quite how to cope with it, except that we were leading in the state in adult education, but the state said, we're not going to pay you to do that the way you're doing it. And boy, did we have to scramble. A lot of people in the community were upset. We had big meetings. A lot of people were coming to the board meetings and speaking, and there was a whole lot of concern. Guess what? It's back, but it's not the same. In many ways, and I think in most ways, it's better. Meaningful subjects. A lot of time. It took us a while to get there because the state had all these rules that we had to follow. We had to make sure that all the classes we taught met certain criteria. And so it took a couple of years to really get a robust selection of classes going, and it's growing. It's growing really good. Can we go to the next slide? It should show some growth. Hey, there we are today, the Schott
Since
Center.
1918, Santa Barbara City College's adult education programs have been changing the lives of those they have touched. Our English as a second language classes open doors for non-native speakers. Our art classes teach new passions in life. And our Career Skills Institute classes offer opportunities for the workplace. The classes we offer at the School of Extended Learning give students the chance to enrich their personal lives, push them to new limits, and explore their endless potential. With student support from instructors and staff along the way, our students are able to succeed in anything they put their minds or bodies to. Join us at the School of Extended Learning to explore your endless potential today.
I think if you take time, if anybody has time to take a class for a hobby, or if you have a need where you work, you need some more skills, you need to look at it. There's a long, long list of classes, and we want community participation. We want to hear from you guys, from the public. We want to hear about what we're not doing that you want, and we want feedback. We want to make it better. We are growing this, and you could see if you go back to 2018's in green, this year's in blue, and you could see the growth from 277 to the fall of last year. I think was 661. Pretty amazing. Well, that was summer, but you look through, it's coming up. What is that? 15-20% a year. It's growing, and we're going to keep that. We've got more classes coming. We've got more opportunities. We also have a lot of community members helping us. We call them, or the School of Extended Learning does, we call them ambassadors. And they go out and solicit opinion. They give us ideas. They work with the public. They tell us about things so that we could, and they don't see the fruits of their work till a couple years later when we're able to implement the classes. That all things don't take that long, but some do. But if we don't hear from you, don't assume that someone else is doing it for you. I remember once, an example of that, I remember one time I lived in another city, and we had a power outage during the winter. And after 30 hours, the power still wasn't back on the block I lived in. And I finally called the power company because I did a bad thing. I assumed that they already knew. I called them up and I said, hey, my power's out, man. It's been over 30 hours. And they said, oh, no, we had you listed as the power's on. And I said, well, guess what? It's not. So you got to take ownership, come, contribute, look what's going on. And when you check out the School of Extended Learning, some of the classes, there's a fee attached. Some there's not. A lot of them don't have fees. And that's the direction we're expanding in. Come check it out and give us your feedback. Tell us what you'd like to see that's not there, or what changes we could make. We'd like to hear from you. Kate, you're next.
All right, some key highlights for 2019-2020. Here is the biggie, of course, our superintendent search. President Miller talked about this at the opening. I think the only things that I will add are that that screening committee has representatives from stakeholders from everywhere in the college, including 2 community members. And after the community forum on the 24th, we will be holding interviews all day on Friday the 25th. So our hope is that we will be able to announce a selection in November. And of course, this person would then start January 1st. Okay, Marcia's going to be talking more about this, the student-centered funding formula, but essentially, this was a huge shift that we've been adjusting to. The state of California moved to, instead of just counting funding based on our enrollment, they moved to a base allocation that's 70% based on enrollment, but then 20% supplemental, which is based on our low-income students, and 10% on how our students are doing over time. And that 10% is based on success metrics that are put together by the state chancellor's office. It's in its first year of implementation. It has been a very bumpy ride, and it continues to be a bumpy ride as we see that the chancellor's office continually kind of changes the goalposts, and we actually don't really know what our budget is for the current year that we're in. But again, Marcia will talk more about that. It's uncertain how this is going to shake out. It does mean that SBCC is going through a lot of significant change in how we operate and how we provide services to students. So the good news is that the college has been making gains in the educational goals for students. As you can see over the last few years, that has trended quite well for us. And the number of degrees awarded has continued to increase, even though I want you to keep in mind that our enrollment has been dropping. So this is really great to see. And then the last thing I want to highlight for 2019-20 is guided pathways. Now, this is coming to all community colleges in California, but SBCC was selected to be one of the 20 pilot community colleges for the Guided Pathways Initiative. And it's a framework that kind of simplifies how we serve students. The essential goal is to change the mindset from students being college ready, meaning they're ready to go on to a four-year institution, to colleges, the community colleges, being student ready. So it's really flipping the mindset on that. It has 4 primary pillars, as you can see. You clarify the path, enter the path. You help students stay on a graduation track, and then make sure that learning is happening with intentional outcomes. And our community will hear more about how that is going at SBC in the upcoming year as we progress on our implementation of guided pathways. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Marcia.
Last one. Let me get here. Last one. So, obviously, I drew the short stick. I got the budget. The budget is complicated, and I will just give you some cliff notes here to some of the challenges that are facing us. As elected trustees, one of our primary responsibilities is the fiscal health of the college. First, think about what a budget is. The budget itself is a policy document. The approved budget reflects the values, priorities, and goals of the district. It's the board's policy statement of how funds should be spent and reserved for future expenses. It reflects what the board believes is in the best interests of its communities and the future of the district. This language comes from the Community College League Introduction to Fiscal Responsibilities for Governing Boards of Community Colleges. My colleagues talked earlier about guided pathways and the new state funding formula. That funding formula is intended to reward not only access, but student success. And as you can see from our mission, student success is central to what we do. These complex challenges, however, are layered over that declining enrollment that we mentioned earlier as well. At our September meeting, the board adopted the 2019-20 budget, which includes a $3.2 million deficit out of a budget of about $100 million. Last year was the first year of that new student funding formula, and we were given funding rates that equaled about $7 million more in revenue than the year before. We said, great, this is really going to be helpful to us and our students. Then the chancellor's office figured out they had promised all the colleges more money than they had. So now they're taking some of it back. Some of last year's money will come back. In addition, they're revising the formulas so they won't hand out as much money. And that is in progress and part of the reason we don't know how they will come out. And because they took a lot of heat for promising more than they could deliver, they decided, as mentioned, that they won't tell us until February 2020 what our revenue will be for this fiscal year, which started already July 1. That's a budget challenge right there. Board policy sets a minimum general fund unrestricted reserve for the budget that we adopted at $21.8 million. That's a pretty good amount of money. The reserves in that general fund unrestricted policy are for reasonable, unforeseen operational needs, basically a recession. During the last recession, for example, the state had a cash flow problem, and so they paid us late by months. They had a schedule, but the money they promised to pay us didn't come in on time, and the reserves helped us make sure that we could pay our employees and our bills during that cash flow crunch. In addition to our policy reserves, we have, at the end of this budget, $2.9 million in undesignated reserves. This is money that helps us deal with coming to a balanced budget. As enrollment declined, that's when we developed a structural deficit. That deficit problem has been a continuing problem for a number of years because enrollment has been declining since 2009-10. Our fall credit enrollment dropped 26% on our main campus since 2009-10 through 2018. Happily, as mentioned, non-credit is growing, but unfortunately that's a much smaller program. As student enrollment declined, the numbers of our employees have not comparably declined. And the portion of our budget that is paying for our employees has risen from about 85% to 90%. Employees are quite frankly, our greatest resources in reaching that student success. This is a challenge. We have a hiring freeze right now. We've cut as much of that remaining 10% as we can, and we've reduced hourly employees. We're working with the superintendent president on a plan to eliminate that structural deficit and to achieve a sustained balanced budget. We'll have to match our employee workforce to the size of our enrollment while continuing to aim for student success and for the success of all of our students, regardless of their educational goals. In fact, the funding formula will encourage us to reach for that success even higher. And increasing efficiency as well, which is a technical term in community colleges and requires a complex management decisions which basically affect the classes that we can offer. All of those things come together in the challenge that we're facing, but we think we can do it, and we think that we will continue to improve on our student success. So we look forward to your questions.
Before we go to comments and questions, let me just add that probably the two most important things that the Board of Trustees performs is one, the budget. And it's a challenge. It's particularly a challenge now, as Marcia has explained, because of the new student funding formula. I think one of the reasons that we initially thought, or it was projected we were going to have a windfall, is because we've done particularly well with student success. And so under the formula that's being adopted, looked like we were going to initially benefit from that. And I think in the long run, we will benefit from that, because I think that our focus has always been on student success, and the metrics that the state has adopted and is adopting, I think that we will thrive in the future. So let's turn to public comments. I don't know if we have any. Didn't. Okay. Well, let's go to questions then. Do we have questions on anything and everything that deals with Santa Barbara City College? Right here.
This may have already been stated, but what is the reason for the decline of enrollment?
That's always a tough question to answer, but one reason I know that we've experienced a decline, in fact, starting in 2008, 2009, is colleges, community colleges generally see a decline. I think all colleges experience this during a recession period, and that's what we entered in 2008, 2009. That usually, I'm sorry, it usually accounts for the increase. So as a recession occurs, people maybe want to go back to school to add to their education. So you see an increase. I had exactly the opposite. And then when times are better, as they've been in the last few years, you see a decline as more people stay in the workforce. So when our revenue was determined entirely by enrollment, that caused a particular problem, because as the enrollment goes down, then our revenues go down. But there's usually a lag in time. So when the enrollment goes up, the numbers are based on the last year's enrollment, and so we have to serve more students with less funding. It's always been a challenge, but now it's under a different funding formula. The enrollment will have a lesser effect on the revenues we receive from the state.
Hi, I'm Pamela Ralston. I'm the Executive Vice President at Santa Barbara City College. So things that add in addition to the fluctuations with unemployed people choosing to come to college or not come to college based on the economy. In a place like Santa Barbara where housing is so expensive, we know that we've had a decline in families living in our local area and living further away. So we have fewer numbers of students in our K-12 system, and that impacts our enrollment here as well. We've also seen a decline in our out-of-state and our international students at the college over the last probably 7 years, and so that's also impacted our enrollment. So it's a little bit of a mix of a great many things. An increased economy, cost of housing, and then how and where we work with students who are out of the area. And we have actually increased enrollment, particularly among full-time students, as a result of our Santa Barbara City College Foundation Promise, which Jonathan had such a great job talking about.
Yeah, I would just add to that that it's actually a national trend and perhaps international. The demographics indicate that there are fewer students graduating from high school and then going into college. And those trends have affected many colleges throughout the country. A number of private colleges, increasing number of private colleges have actually closed. So that affects us. Also, the Promise program that Jonathan mentioned that our foundation led with has been adopted by quite a number of other community colleges in California, and that provides an incentive for students who might have come to our campus from around California to stay in their communities as well, because they will get financial aid for doing that. So lots of factors involved here.
Is there another question on that topic?
Hi, it appears that another reason is that there's been less marketing outside of district and internationally, and I'm wondering why the board has been so slow to respond to our drop in enrollment by continuing to discourage out of district marketing and yeah, and in the case I think in international, we've increased the international marketing, but it came, fairly late in our dropping enrollment. So why were you? What is the continued reason for not wanting to market out of district?
I think we actually do market out of district. I'm not aware of any decision, at least since I've been on the board in the last 19 months, to decide not to seek international or non-resident students, but looks like Marcia may have a comment as she's grabbing the microphone.
I would just say that as far as marketing in California outside your district, it's illegal without permission of the other community college. And so, no, we don't do it. That's a statutory prohibition on that. So I think that affects, people are making their own decisions when they're deciding where to go. And I also think the economy affects that as well. More kids are staying home, staying with their parents, that sort of thing.
But we do have a program for advertising, I know, at least with international students. So I don't think we've pulled back on that. I know there's an ongoing discussion about whether or not we should expand it. But I think your suggestion was that somehow we weren't advertising for international students. And Jonathan.
What I will say is at our board retreat back in June, we did get some numbers that I think we might have lowered our marketing a bit. And if right now we're at 900-ish international students, when I got on the board, it was around 1,500. If we move back up to our cap, we'd be bringing in $6 to $7 million in revenue, which would probably close our deficit.
Yeah, I think one thing we have to keep in mind is, I think, as Marcia alluded to, in terms of enrollment going down generally for colleges, enrollment from international students is going down across the board. Not surprisingly, under the current climate, It's more difficult to get visas. Maybe some international students are less interested in coming. It's more speculation, but the numbers are clearly down, although not a great amount. I think in our preliminary numbers for this year, we don't have the actual numbers, but it does show a percent or two decline in both international and those from the state. Greg, do you have a comment?
Yeah, just a couple more quick facts. The board just a few years ago, we put a cap on the number of international students. So, and we're under that cap, but the cap is less than our peak enrollment. We heard a lot of loud voices in the community that were telling us, "What are you doing with all these students? Why are you bringing them here? We have problems with housing." And we reacted to the community. So we do listen. When you guys speak to us, when you communicate to us, we do listen. But we try not to just listen to the volume. We try to listen to how loud you are, but to how many of you are. And we really look at the situation. So we also, we basically didn't necessarily cut the marketing, out of country marketing, but we did raise the costs, the rates, which have a direct effect that we could predict on how many students we have. So we really, because we raised the rates, that doesn't mean that we lost a lot of money by doing that. And I don't know about increasing it. If we increase it at today's rates, we might not be able to. If we lower the rates, we could possibly. Yes.
I have two comments. One is that the perception in the community is that there are a greater number of international students by percentage than what there actually are. If there were 1,500 international students and the population is 18,000, that's far less than 10%. And the public's perception. The public's perception is that their international students number were far greater and that the percentage of international students at City College was much greater than 10%. And that was shocking. And I know because when I walked my dog at Shoreline Park, people came up to me and said, "Will you sign a petition to get rid of international students?" And so I find that the Board of Trustees should be more transparent in saying, this is actually the percentage of international students that we have at Santa Barbara City College, and this is the percentage that we feel comfortable with. Secondly, with regard to marketing out of district, if Santa Barbara City College is offering a program that is not offered in that district, then they can market there. And so if you have a program that is a transferable program, a certificate program that is not offered at that particular community college, even within our county, we could market to that particular college because they're not offering that.
Let me say that you did accurately mention the $1,500 student limit for international students. And if you recall the slide, I think the numbers now, or at least in 2018, were about 900. So we do have the ability to grow. And I think we'd all agree, too, that the international students we have on campus provide a good environment. They provide a good learning experience for all the students, and I think it adds to the value of the learning experience for everybody, not just the international students. We, as you noted, our student trustee is an international student, and I think that that the college benefits enormously from the numbers of international students that we do have.
Yes, you are correct. And so what I'm hearing, I just want to make sure I understand what the request is, that we would report the number as a percentage to the total student population in addition to the total amount. Is that the request to communicate, when we communicate numbers on international students, that we would communicate that number as a percentage to the total population enrolled and also as a head count? Yes. Yeah. Okay. And that's good. So we used to have a board policy that was 5%, and then back in 2008, it was increased to 8% because of the budget deficit that the district was experiencing. under Dr. Gaskin's leadership, the recommendation to the board was that we just have a policy that doesn't state a percentage, but that is just a flat number so that the college can plan. So you're correct in saying that because we have declining enrollment, the number of international students currently exceeds a higher percentage than some of our previous policies that we've had. So that perception is true because when you crunch the numbers, the percentage is higher. So currently 8% of our current population would be about 1,200 students, and we have it set at 1,500. But I think that should not be a problem, the request to report both percentages and numbers so that it's clear. Right? Dr. Benjamin, Dr. Ralston, right? Is that possible? Okay, so thank you for requesting that.
Any
Yeah.
other questions? Oh, Marcia, sorry.
I was just going to also refer to national trends yet again. We have about the same number of international students right now that we had in 2009 with a larger enrollment. So the trends nationally have gone up and then they have come down. And we're just not immune from these larger picture events that happen at the college. The other thing I think people often don't realize is we are slightly more out of district students in enrollment than we are in district students. If you add up the students who come from out of the district in California, the international students and the out-of-state students, the number will be slightly higher than the number of in-district students. So we have a real diverse group of students here at Santa Barbara City College.
Hello, everyone. I would like to thank everyone for bringing up this topic. I'm an international student at Santa Barbara City College, currently studying computer science, and I've been serving on the board for the past 9 months. I think what has happened is most members of the board say the community doesn't like international students. So there's been this misconception that international students take classes from local students when this is not true. In fact, this semester, I've had 2 classes closed down because there were not enough students to fill these classes. So I think the board has to do more in communicating, just like you said, in communicating the truth to the community that we have very low international students and international students are not taking classes from local students. And that would, because when you say from the board that the community doesn't like international students, that's what goes so far in reducing the perception of international students in Santa Barbara City College. So they would rather go somewhere else than come here. Thank you.
So I think that's an excellent point. There are some classes that we wouldn't be able to offer but for the interest from international students, and it provides an opportunity for those classes to exist for our district students who wouldn't otherwise have those class offerings. Any other questions? Yes, right here.
Yeah, for the 10% of funding that comes from student success, could you just detail what qualifies as student success? Is it graduation rates or transfer rates?
It's a whole list of metrics, and Dr. Ralston, I think, can help us out with this.
There are 9, and it'd be really great if I could remember each and every one of them, but I'll get close. I'll probably hit 6. So the state is really interested in students entering into college level math and English. And so we have a recent law that was passed called AB 705, which encourages that shift in assessment and placement. As a result of that, our faculty have worked really hard in English, math, and ESL to alter the way we do assessment and placement, curriculum changes, and the out-of-class support that we do. So if we succeed with more students completing that important first level math and English course in that first year, the state will give us a benefit to help support the cost that it takes to do that. The number of students who transfer to CSU and UC and other private institutions all qualify as part of those success metrics. Students who complete associate degrees, both our local associate degrees and those associate degrees for transfer, and you saw some figures on that in the slides, all count. And some other component parts, certificates, and the ability for students to earn a living wage as a result of having attended the college, which is always one of our great goals.
Is it also, is it also true that the amount of time it takes to get the degree counts?
So that's a component factor on some other pieces of state initiatives that we're working on, which is reducing the overall units that it takes for a student to complete. So statewide, that average is in the mid 80s for a 60-unit degree. We're a little bit lower because we're a really fabulous college. And so we're continually trying to pull that number down so students are taking what they need, succeeding when they take it, and then being able to complete when they leave.
Thank you.
Sure, thanks.
Any other questions? About right here.
How many applicants do you have for the new position of superintendent president?
It started at about 45, 44, and I believe it's now, no. There are 4 or 5 applicants. That's all I can tell you at the moment. I've been told, be careful. Be careful.
Do you want to go here or?
I just wondered, are the students, especially the starting students, made aware of all these metrics that the college has to meet so that they have an interest in it?
That's a good question. I think I'm going to call on Dr. Ralston again, but I think probably not yet because it's so new that
It's actually a really interesting way to be framing it. So that kind of ownership of your own success on behalf of yourself and your college. We haven't framed it that way, but we're always talking to students about how important it is for them to succeed within the course that they're in, the course of study they're in for that term. And then, one of those other metrics is our retention rate from fall to spring, which we do very well. So the ways in which we keep the students who come to us and have them succeed while they're here is also a financial benefit for us. But I think maybe one of the things we'll start doing is talking to them about how their staying put does well for themselves and the college. So thank you for that.
we have a question back here.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question about adult ed. And so if there are free courses for adult ed, how is that funded? And also then how are the lower funding rates for adult ed courses funded?
Well, I'm going to have somebody else address this in detail, but we do receive revenue based on School for Extended Learning enrollment in classes.
Everyone's pointing at someone else because our vice president for the School of Extended Learning is not here this evening. My name is Lindsay Moss. I'm the vice president of business services. So your question was about how adult ed, the tuition-free courses are funded. Those are funded by the state by the amount of FTES, that's full-time equivalent student. That funding has not changed in the new student-centered funding formula. We're funded in the same way we were before. It's not funded on that 70%, 20%, 10% split. It's just funded straight on the FTES for our non-credit courses.
Thank you.
I'd like to just expound on that. I don't have anything new to tell you, but this is so important to the community, or at least it was a few years back. And it still is, hence you see the growth that's going on. So classes that the state won't pay for, those are fee-based. And we're developing new classes and working hard to get more classes, that the state will pay us for. It's a matter of funding. So maybe, I don't just throw it out here, and I haven't seen it happen anywhere in the country, but it probably has one or two places. Maybe we get a promise program for all classes are free, but the money has to come from somewhere. I don't know where to get it. I do know we have to get it somewhere. What the state will pay for, we're using it every last dollar we can scrounge up. And it's really important to serve the community. The reason we exist is to serve the people within our district and to have an enriching experience. And I hope everybody here can get behind the fact that we have, why do people come here? From out of state, from out of the country, from other parts of the state, because we do some pretty special things. That's why they come here. And also we're a gateway to UCSB. You want to go to one of the top universities in the country? come to SBCC, you'll get in. As long as you pass your classes, you'll get in. We've got the programs. Now it's going to get more competitive because everybody else is trying to copy what SBCC has been doing, and in order to meet those metrics so they can keep their budgets. Otherwise, their funding will go down as ours get up. So it'll tend to just even out over time. It's just they took the reward away from us for the first couple years. So now we don't even have a budget. We're betting on the come here. Thank you.
Let me just follow up for just a minute on that. The amazing thing about SBCC is how many different ways we help people in the community. From those who want to receive their GED, we've had people who served in the military. They left for the military out of high school. They come back 10 years later. They decide they want to go to college, and they come here and get their GED. One of the most heartwarming exercises I've been through is standing up here handing out those GED diplomas, many of whom go on to Santa Barbara City College. If you want to learn a trade, you come to Santa Barbara City College. We have a nursing program where, I could be wrong about this, they can correct me, but I believe that almost every graduate of that program is guaranteed a position at Cottage Hospital. We have a marine diving program, one of the few such programs in the country. If you want to learn a trade to be an auto mechanic, you can do that at SBCC. You can come to SBCC out of high school. Maybe you didn't have a good enough grade point to get into a UC school. You can come if you get a 3.2 or above. You're guaranteed admission to UCSB. We fill a whole range of needs, I think, in our economy and for our community. That's why I'm passionate about serving at SBCC. Other questions?
Could one of you comment on the health of the foundation, the fiscal health of the foundation, or anything relevant?
I'm going to call on Jonathan, who is our representative to the foundation.
Yeah, so I have the pleasure of being the trustee liaison to the foundation. We just got our audit out today, and I don't have the numbers on me, but it was one of our strongest years in bringing in revenue. The foundation is really focused on being able to raise its operational revenue every year so that it could use the other funds it has for scholarships and the promise and such. And so we're doing very strong right now at the foundation. I don't have the exact numbers. If someone can I think our revenue this year was 9.5 million. And so we're in strong fiscal health, the foundation.
And the Promise program that the foundation essentially created, I think, is recognized as one of the most robust such programs in the country. I think you hear about Promise programs. The rest of the state of California is trying to catch up with us. Other colleges outside of California are trying to catch up with us. They performed an amazing service coming up with the Promise program, which, when you think about it, to guarantee every high school graduate in our community college district admission to Santa Barbara City College for no cost for tuition, no cost for books, no cost for supplies, as long as they commit to take a certain load and stay in school. Other questions?
Well, I'll take this quick opportunity before she leaves to thank you all for being here and thank our State Senator Hannah Beth Jackson for being here. And our 2nd District County Supervisor Greg Hart. Thank you.
One last call. I think we're done, I guess. I don't see any other hands. Thank you all for coming. This has been very good.